If you're familiar with these dumb adventure vids, you know I've spent a lot of time in the North Cascades. Every trip is challenging. It's common to encounter intense elevation gain, snow, fog, and navigation issues, and sometimes all of these conditions all at once. Preparation, hydration, and determination are the essentials of any adventure and make these challenges a little easier to endure. The majority of my trip was spent in Alexandria, the second largest city in Egypt. It's located north of Cairo along the Mediterranean coast. Alexander the Great founded the city in 331 BC. It became a center of Greek culture during the Hellenistic period and went through periods of decline and revitalization over the billion years since then. This wasn't my first trip to Egypt or Alexandria, but it was my first time traveling there alone. I was originally supposed to attend a summer course at Pharaohs University, but I wasn't really feeling it, so I dropped out after a week. This gave me a month to go on long walks throughout the city, so I'd wake up every morning before sunrise, thanks to the 4 a.m. Salat al-Fajr, head for the sea, then east or west along the coast. I wouldn't always run, of course, but I did prepare for these excursions around the city with the same care as wilderness hiking. One of my rules for my stay was that I would walk everywhere. I was going to treat that month in Alexandria as a giant urban hike. I had the benefit of escaping to the library or going into cookie shops for supplies, but to reduce exposure to the sun, I still needed to wear the proper clothing and carry plenty of water and snacks to get through the day. Route planning was my top priority. City centers in Egypt are densely populated. I started to imagine street crossings much like dangerous streams in the mountains. Traffic flows unregulated like water, taking its own shape and speed, and being the cause of 75% of all pedestrian road traffic fatalities in Egypt. The few ancient sites scattered across the city are like bifurcated images contrasting the present with different points of time throughout history. In the museums, I travel 5,000 years, dipping in and out of eras, like the Old Kingdom to the New Late Kingdom, or the Greek and Roman periods, all of these timelines stretching the length of a room. To my untrained eye, it was difficult to grasp the distinction of kingdoms that spanned over 3,000 years. If I had been alive during any of these eras, would I approach these artifacts with the same wonder, or would they have been unknown and inaccessible to someone like me, disconnected from grandeur and power? The split image becomes most obvious as ancient ruins share the claustrophobic horizon with crumbling buildings built within the last 100 years. But yeah, strange mysteries of the modern world persist. Like, who are these tomato kids and where did they come from? Did they land on these shores with Napoleon, then cross the Atlantic to the New World as a hushed and phantasmal legend, creeping in the woods, submerged in lakes, and spying from dark alleys? I was haunted by these questions. Yet in the tunnels and catacombs beneath the city, there's an instant change. There are no tomato kids. There's a coolness of air, and an eerie silence that occludes the chaos of the living in any sense of that grand passage of time that dwarfs and sublimates fractions of existence. Exploring the underworld charged a sense of fantasy, that maybe it is possible to find alien magic and strange creatures, that ancient rites do have power, and that dark passages will house the unexpected, if you go deep enough. After a month of wandering around Alexandria, I left for Sharm el-Sheikh. Sharm is located near the southernmost point of the Sinai Peninsula that branches the Red Sea. The Gulf of Suez is to the west, and the Gulf of Aqaba is to the east. The land consists of sand dunes, quaternary deposits, Cretaceous and Tertiary limestone outcrops, and Precambrian magmatic rocks, and on the outskirts of the city, very empty roads. For most of its history, South Sinai was undeveloped, but international events such as the Suez Crisis in 1957 and the Six Days War in 1967 led to its occupation and reoccupation by Israel. Between 1967 and 1970, Israel began developing the area, building an Air Force base and a settlement. The Sinai Peninsula was returned to Egypt in 1982, and Sharm was quickly converted into a resort town. My goal for this part of the trip was to visit Ras Mohammed National Park in the official southernmost part of the Sinai. It's about 12 miles from Sharm. Since I don't have an international driver's license, I had to hire a guide to transport me. The drive was somewhat disorienting after spending a month in a densely built city. Even though Alexandria has an accessible flat horizon by way of the sea, there's never a real escape from the signs of very active human habitation. But here, the landscape is vacant and quiet, and one could get lost in the silence if not for the oppressive heat. Mangrove forests are one curious ecosystem along the shore. Mangroves filter seawater by expelling salt through their leaves. They are the home to birds, crabs, and small fish. My guide told me a story about a giant immobile snake that had porked out on something big and was resting by the parking area. I didn't get to see anything like that, by chance and by design of the guided tour. The scope of the tours are limited, so visitors are quickly shuffled from one site, like this earthquake crack or this lagoon, and then on to the next, all the while everyone taking social media friendly photographs at all the popular sites. I would have preferred to explore on my own, but that's just not how it goes sometimes. In all fairness, my guide was great, and I understood that not everyone wants to post up under the scorching sun so they could maybe see some weird bird, especially if they experience these conditions every day. I couldn't wait to explore the coral reefs. We entered the water just as a tour bus unloaded into the sea. The reef was incredibly vibrant and filled with tons of fish. I sort of wanted to see a shark, but maybe not too closely, especially since a man had been eaten alive recently in Hurghada.
I am going to go snorkeling for my second time today.
The water at the resort was shallow. I had to walk a bit before it was deep enough to float, but even then it might have only been 3 or 4 feet deep. The coral here was bleached, with only a few fish territorially swimming around rocks. There wasn't much to see, but it was a pleasant way to stay cool. This fish had major beef with me. From Sharm, I went to Dahab. To get there, you exit Sharm and head northeast, through the mountains, multiple checkpoints, and then west to the coast. I had been to Dahab once before in 2015. We had to pass through heavily militarized checkpoints. The checkpoints were still there, but all the very threatening weapons were gone, and everyone seemed rather jovial. Dahab is a popular location for divers. It's located a few miles south of the infamous Blue Hole. It's also a well-known destination for foreign hippies and Egyptians looking to get away from the congestion of the big cities. I had a ton of adventures planned for this part of my trip, but an official misread my visa, and it was suggested that I exit the country early to avoid problems.
So it looks alright.
This mistake was acknowledged on my way out of the country. It was a major bummer. Between the emails and phone calls to figure out my situation, I had to fit what I could into a few days. One of the most accessible adventures is snorkeling at the Lighthouse Reef. It's located in the center of Dahab, which is an easy walk along the shoreline that gives a clear view of Saudi Arabia across the Gulf. There are shops all along the boardwalk, so a person could pork out immediately after going for a swim. The site is a reference to a lighthouse that is supposed to be in the area, but I never saw it, or maybe it existed in the past. Another mystery. Entry into the snorkeling area is easy, and fish hang out in the sandy area before the reef. Diving classes are conducted along the reef. Surprisingly, I thought this reef was more active in comparison to Ras Mohammed, but that might have been a matter of water clarity. And since I was snorkeling solo, I could loiter around anything that attracted my interest. But since I was snorkeling solo, a bit of apprehension crept into me after I started swimming around the north-south portion of the reef that gives exposure to open water. It's like experiencing a void in the physical sense, so close that if there was anything to touch, I could hold it. Only there's nothing but my dumb body bobbing in its waves. The next day, I had a little bit of time to waste before flying back to Cairo and beginning my journey home. I ventured into the streets that led out of town to Arsala Beach and the foothills that begin the Sinai Mountains. There was supposed to be a viewpoint overlooking the coast. I just had to find the trail leading to it, so I walked into the desert. I found remnants of campfires in pockets all along the canyon and lots of weird shrubs. and then I walked some more. It became apparent that I had no idea where I was going.
I really have no idea where the overlook is, and I'm just going to keep going for a little bit and maybe check out some of these hills behind me. And if I don't find it, that's okay. And I'll just try to make the best of it before I go.
I was poking around some rocks looking for scorpions when I noticed some movement to my side. A desert fox had been investigating me. I decided to follow it.
But I think this is a little path up, and I've got to be careful. There's a beetle.
The fox led me through a path up the hill. It looked like it would give access to the summit, but maybe I was putting a little bit too much trust in the fox, like I was an adventurer in a fairy tale submitting to a guide from the natural world who would lead me to treasure or my death. Maybe it knew where the viewpoint was. It did not.
I totally missed it earlier, but this is the real trail to the overlook. It's right behind me. You can see some steps. It's right by the beginning of the trail. So I just totally walked by it, and I'm a dork. But I've got time to kill, so I'm gonna go walk up it.
It's a short but steep climb to the top. The view completely changed my perspective of what Dahab is as a city. I spent all my time near the water and never had a sense that it was developed further inland.
So this is it. I'm turning around and I'm going back to the hotel, and then it'll be time to say goodbye.